Hello. All right. Well, we'll see what the latency is on this guy. So I've been messing around with the different YouTube live stream what do you call them, settings, and there's all these things about normal latency, low latency, ultra low latency, which I was expecting having low latency would be a good thing for conversing with people. It is, but it's really crap video. So I guess that has to do with the encoder or whatever. Right now I'm on normal latency, and until I can get up to about maybe 5 to 10 concurrent viewers, I'll probably keep it at normal just because the video is going to be a lot better if I do that. So jump on and get your friends to watch me talk about DreadLore and drink from my ember mug because it's awesome. Okay, I'm going to start at this space stuff because it's awesome. All right. So, for those of you that do not know, I'm Bill. For those of you that do know, you know. And if you didn't know, now you know. So there. This live stream is about the DreadLore system Kickstarter, which the plan right now is to start it in June, so June 1st of this year, and I think it will be good. I'm pretty. Oh, let me turn down my mic because it's crazy loud, isn't it? Ooh, hold on a second. I'm gonna turn. See, it doesn't have a filter on it. Oh, OBS, you rue. Make this a little bit better for y'all. -2. Oh, that's -20. Boom. Awesome. Okay, so it should not peak any longer. Sorry if it was peaking. That is my bad. Right. If the space is too crazy, then let me know. It might be moving too fast. I originally had a background that totally wasn't like that. I mean, it was, the universe, but it was really, really slow. Actually, maybe I can change that and just make it. Whoa, that's trippy. Maybe I can make it like a quarter the speed. Oh, that looks like ass. It looks like a bad screensaver. That's better. Okay, right on. Boom. Excellent. Excellent. Right, so this stream is about the DreadLore Kickstarter. So I'm going to start out describing a little bit about what DreadLore is, for those of you that don't know. And, if you do, then post in the chat that I need to just move on, and I will. So DreadLore, the DreadLore system is a tabletop role-playing game. It's mechanics specifically for playing, role-playing games. And DreadLore has its own setting as well. It's a dark fantasy setting, which is to say, we like to call it fantasy punk. And I can go into that genre a little bit. I don't think it's used too often, but there's a few ways to describe it. So normally when people think of fantasy, they probably they think of Tolkien and Lord of the Rings. That's pretty good. The idea that there's magic in the world. It's kind of a medieval-ish setting. There's also technology in the world. So in Tolkien's universe, it's kind of like a proto-Earth. That is a contentious statement, I understand, but you could describe it like that. There's machines of war and such, and by and large they operate like they do in the real world. There's just also magic. In DreadLore, you could argue it's a higher magic setting. Magic is more prevalent in the world, and we call it Magicka because with a C and a K, because we like language, and I don't know, it sounded cool. Magicka, Magicka. I mean, it's magic. It's kind of unexplainable stuff. We like to describe it as art. So in a setting like one of the Dungeons and Dragons settings, or really any most settings, even in Numenera, there's this idea of technology is here, magic is here, and they're kind of like the yin and the yang, right? They either balance out each other, or hey, look, a quasar. They either balance out each other, or they cancel each other out, or something like that. That is not the case in DreadLore. I'm trying to start from ground zero and then move up from there. So how to put this? Magic can't do everything. It's not the Swiss Army knife of life. In some settings, magic is that. It's kind of everything. Think of like Harry Potter. Magic can kind of do everything, and it is everything, and only some people can use it. In DreadLore, magic is more like creativity. It's more about an artistic idea, approach. You express yourself with Magicka if you can do it. And so the mages, the wizards, they're not scientists. They're artists. Their heads are in the clouds. They're philosophers and thinkers and impassioned and these kinds of things. The thinkers, when it comes to more of a mathematical, regimented way of thinking, more of a natural science, if you will, they are the theurgists. Now, theurgists are the scientists. Think pseudoscience, alchemy, marvel making, weird astronomy, right? Looking at the planets, calculating things, imbibing tinctures so that they can, extrapolate theories and whatnot, experience the world in different ways. Those are theurgists. They're the pseudoscientists. And there's a spirituality to that. Theurgy comes from, it's an Egyptian type of mysticism. That's where I got it from. And it sounds cool. So when you talk about Theurgy, you're talking about technology. The actual items of technology, so things like this, would be considered Sprock. Sprock is clockwork things, machines, pulley systems, anything steampunky, steam-powered, Magicka-powered, whatever. That's all Sprock. And you make that, you fix it, you understand it, and attempt to understand it through the study of Theurgy. So that's a theurgist. Magicka, we call it the colors of Magicka. So kind of like, it's based on Roy G. Biv, basically. Each color of Magicka, think like light. It's like painting with light. And there's different scrolls. So these different scrolls would be the schools of Magicka, if you will. There's the natural, which deals with any sort of naturally occurring thing in the world. The world is called Craster, so the world is quite different. Hey, we got a bunch of ads up there. Hold on, let me change that really quick. Really? Lose the watermarks, man. Okay, hold on a second. This relaxing stuff has got to go. How do you do the watch now or watch later thing? Here, hold on a second. Sorry. So unprofessional. It's so unprofessional. Oh my god. Oh my god. Also, if any of that needs further explanation, then please let me know. And we will throw down. I actually have some of this stuff in YouTube's way of doing playlists is quite annoying because it's always by what you used last and not alphabetical. So if you have a ton of if you have a ton of playlists, it's really hard. Let's see, screensaver? I don't know. What would be good? I don't want to do cosmic relaxation. Let's see if these people throw down dumb ads. I know ads are like a thing. Nah, that's wrong. There we go. I don't know if I like that or not. I know ads are a thing. You need revenue and all that crap, but at the same time, come on. When was the internet free? What happened? What happened? Yeah? You're gonna be dumb ads on this? Alright. Space! Clouds in space! Right. So, what was I talking about? Right. The colors of Magicka. Ooh. Just a second. See, that should be full screen. And it did not go full screen. OBS. Why you gotta slut me, OBS? Okay, now it's not working. You should be able to see that. Let's do this. Boom, 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 boom. And it's not working. Alright, well, I can't do it. That sucks. This is me every time I try to live stream. There's so many technical issues that really frustrate a motherfucker. Alright, I'm gonna fix this really fast. Oh my god, it makes me so mad. You know what, I'm just gonna show you the bug. Fuck YouTube. How about that? How about that? Alright, so a little bit more about the world. Magicka is it's artistic. It's about light. It's based around this idea of not pigmentation that you would use with paint, but we wanted to go beyond that, and this is a little bit of the background behind the creation of it. When you get into the primary colors, right? You think, oh, how do you make orange? Well, you put red and yellow together, right? Well, that's with pigments. Blue and red make purple with pigments, but not with light. With light, you need red, green, and blue. Those are your primary colors. So if you mix red, green, and blue together, you get white. And if you've ever been to one of those astronomy museums or something dealing with art, STEAM rather than STEM, you'll see that. It's pretty cool. Anyway, that's where we got the idea of colors of Magicka and just how the unexpected happens. Sometimes things are unintentional. And that's the idea with Magicka. There's always chaos. And chaos is a force in the world of Craster. So this becomes a game mechanic as well as a piece of the flair. I gotta turn it off OBS. I keep on looking at myself. Which is annoying. Okay. So, right. So there's always chaos involved. You have the scrolls of Magicka. So natural Magicka. This is dealing with anything in the world that naturally occurs. Think of the elements. So the original idea was the kind of like Avatar, the elements are earth, wind, fire, whatever. We kind of got away from that. Instead, those are not elements as in on the periodic table, but they are gross things that can be manipulated, natural stuffs that Magicka can manipulate. So with that, you have air and flame. That's one of the circles within the scroll of natural Magicka. So think of like a big old scroll, and the ancient mages have written that stuff down, and some of it's incomplete, some of it is guarded. But if you're in the colleges, you're going to be exposed to certain pieces of it. The scroll of the natural has within it the circle of air and flame. Well, what is that? It's dynamic magicka. It's the push and the pull, convection, the manipulation of heat, the motion of natural substances. So you get into air and flame, creating thunder, creating quote unquote fire. Well, an air and flame mage is also, you could call them a fire wizard, sure. They're also a cold wizard as well, or an ice wizard. Why? Because you're manipulating heat. You pull heat from something enough, it becomes cold. You take heat from somewhere else, manifest a fireball, and throw it at someone. Somewhere else became cold. You're using that energy, that you could call it chaos, you could call it ethos, life energy, substance of the world we call ethos. You take that and you manipulate it in that direction, motion. So it's a highly creative thing. It can be detrimental, it can be highly destructive. The other form of natural magic is earth and aegis. So this is dealing with water, dealing with the firmer elements, earth, as evidenced by the name, magnetism. And in the book, there's descriptions of what it means to be an earth and aegis mage, or an air and flame mage. And you can dip into both. You just have to have a good story reason why. Was it in your background? Did you see it? Had you been investigating it? And the game builds on that kind of stuff. So, if you've played something like Mage the Awakening, which is by White Wolf, and that entire system is about being a mage. There's this idea of, with magic, what can you do? You don't really have spells, you're creating spells. DreadLore is a bit in that line. Everything's through a description. So you might have a well-known power. For instance, combustion. Igniting something and making it explode. But you as the mage, you're using, that's an ability you have. Just like a person can swing a sword, they've been trained to swing that sword correctly. You've been trained to use that combustion, but how you do it is variable. There's a big old monster, I swing up this way, or I stab, or I throw my sword, or whatever. I don't know why you throw your sword, but they do it in the movies. A mage can do the same kind of thing with their power. And that's through your description, your bidding, your trait. That gets into the mechanics of DreadLore. We can do that later. But the idea is, there's plenty of things you can do with that combustion. It's not just, I am Tim. Monty Python, not Tim Roberts. If you don't know, Ninja Tim, as I call him, he's one of the frontline DreadLore guys. He's run lots of our games at cons, done some of the artwork, has been a really big supporter of DreadLore, and has played the game a whole lot. So I wanted to make the distinction. Okay, so that's a little bit about Magicka, a little bit about Theurgy. I'm drinking everything in the planet. Hey, I have a viewer. Hello, viewer. Who are you? Name yourself, so I know who you are. Hello. Alright. So, that's a little bit about the world when it comes to Magicka and Theurgy, which is to say, the magic elements, the artistic elements, and of the game that you can do, and the powers you can do as a character, and Theurgy, the scientific or pseudoscience that you can do. Theurgists are the scientists. Mages are the artists in the game. And in a world where you have both Theurgy and Magicka, it's going to influence society quite a bit. And it influences the world of Craster quite a bit. So there's this question. When I was, when Bad, which is my buddy who we created DreadLore together, I came up with the main idea of the world a long time ago through running Dungeons and Dragons games as well as D6 games and all kinds of stuff. But the idea of, if you have mages, why wouldn't they rule everything? Right? If you've seen the Dungeons and Dragons movie, I'm sorry, but one thing that I feel like they got right in it was mages are the aristocrats. They're the rulers. Why? Because they can shoot fireballs and control dragons and shit, right? Why would they ever serve someone? Well, you have a few ways of managing this, because in DreadLore, mages are not the rulers. You could have a ruler who has some awareness of Magicka, or Theurgy, or is an archmagus, or whatever you want to call them. But mages are not the ones who necessarily rule. The politically minded are the ones who rule. The ones who are conquerors in that age of Craster, because there's 6 ages, they're the ones who rule. So why is Magicka not so powerful? Well, there's a couple ways of dealing with this. One, chaos. Magicka is the artistic element, or the study of art, if you will. Maybe that's not the best way of saying it. You get where I'm going with it. It's not precise. You can't always count on it. And this is portrayed in the mechanics by what's called a chaos die. You roll that chaos die, and if it rolls a 1, then the spell or the Magicka doesn't do something intended. It does something unintended, and depending on how powerful you're going with it, how powerful your intent is, that could be a catastrophe. Same thing with Theurgy, same thing with doing crazy actions in the game. For example, called shots have a chaos die. Doing something bold has a chaos die. Now, the flip side of a chaos die is you can gain extra successes. Again, that's mechanics, which I'm going to stay away from mechanics in this live stream. So, why aren't mages in power? Because you can't always count on Magicka. Also, it's not completely understood. Just like art, there's a lot of it that's subjective. There are stories of mages who really, really believe that they can control a beast of the wilderness, and it ends up not working, or and they die, or they pop themselves, or they go insane, or they're fooling around with the unnatural scroll of Magicka. You have the natural, which is a little bit safer because it's dealing with things that are physical, right? Then you have the unnatural. You're dealing with things from the void, from the beyond, other realms that inspire insanity, because you're not supposed to know those things. That's the horrific element within the game. A lot of them are never heard from again, or they're feared because they can't control their power or whatever. You don't want that person being the Mad King or the Mad Queen. And oftentimes a mage isn't so concerned with politics because, they have this whole other realm that they're exploring. Another way of dealing with it is maybe there's not so many mages in the world. So in the narrative, you have kind of ranks. We call them houses of Magicka. And the way that you gain a higher house, it's not about the mechanics so much. It does influence things. If you're of a higher house, then you technically have more control. Your descriptions of your spells and your intentions can be more precise. But in the narrative, if someone's like, I'm a house 1, that's the first rank, people could say, okay, well, that's like having, an associate's degree in something. You're skilled, you've gone to school about it, but do you actually know what you're doing? Oh, you're house 2, you've got a bachelor's. You've been through it, but that doesn't mean you know anything per se. When you get into that house 3 or 4, this is a mage who has had the acclaim of the mage community. And that's how you actually gain rank in the houses, is by creating spells, by being a part of the community. There you go. So there's this idea. A mage who has a political ambition, are they going to be stamped down by everyone else and controlled by the colleges? Yes. Right? So that answers my previous question. Now, as in why are mages not in charge of everything? The idea of there's few mages. I mean, when you think about it, how many player characters, like if you tell them, okay, well, you can be a mage and it's really powerful, how many are going to be like, ah, no, I'm not one of the 1,000? No, you're going to have like a party full of mages, and it just so happens they're this powerhouse, right? And they're also oftentimes murder hobos, and just by dint of Magicka being chaotic. But it is interesting to say, well, maybe Magicka can be prevalent. Even within the provinces, the tiny Habershams and stuff. I don't know if Habersham is actually a word. I don't know if I used that correctly. Hamlets, villages and such. Thorps. You know, someone has a device that has Magicka inlaid on it. Something about it has Magicka to it, has a power to it. Or they have an instrument of Magicka. So this could be like a wand or a rod or a mouse or something. It does a couple things, and this person knows how to use it. But this is low tier Magicka. This is like House 1, House 2. So the idea is that there's not high tier Magicka prevalent. And more importantly, there aren't a lot of characters rolling around with House 5 and 6, which is the highest house, 6. Even player characters, when you start, you're not going to be that high, unless your character specifically is that. And then you're playing the ultra, I know tons and tons of Magicka guy or girl or someone, and that's an entire way of playing. It's at the expense of a few other things. So when wandering through the wilds of Craster, you're oftentimes not going to come across a House 5 mage. And if you do, they definitely are named. They definitely have a reputation. You've probably heard about them in the history books. Okay. That said, a little bit more. There are no levels. This is not a class-based system. DreadLore isn't. And there's no levels. There's no level 1. There's no level 20. There's no level, I'm at level 10. I want to get to level 11 so I can get that spell. That doesn't exist. It's more of a point-buy system, if you know what that is. And even then, you're not spending points so much to gain the next level or the next power. Instead, think of it more like, again, I don't want to get too much into the mechanics. It's so easy to delve into that. It's more like, what is your character and what should they be doing? You've created this when you create a character. And then as the story allows, you go into things. So you could be a fighter who goes into Magicka or into Theurgy, or vice versa. I'm a mage who's decided to use a sword and get good at it. Boom, you can do it. As you advance, and there's a system for advancing, when you advance, you choose, I want that thing, and you take the thing, assuming the arbiter, the storyteller, allows, assuming the story fits that. And now you have that ability. You can do the thing. How much of it you can do, that's into the description, and there's rules for that. So, the game is very narrative in a very immersive way. Let's talk a little bit more about the world. Higer! Right. I know you, Amarias. Okay. Let's talk about the bestiary. That's why I have it up here. Is it actually being shown? Yeah, good. And let me move my little face so you can actually see what's going on. Boop, 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 boop. Let me move the book so you can actually see what's going on. There we go. Actually, I'll do this. Do this. That didn't help at all, did it? There we go. Make that guy a little bit bigger. Bam. Hopefully you can read that. Emrys, I know you can't because you're driving. So I'm going to read a little bit from the bestiary, talk a little bit about the races, the playable races in DreadLore. This is one of the hurdles that we've had to manage over. One of the obstacles we've had to get around. When you say you have a fantasy game, oftentimes people say, oh, right, I want to be an elf. And when they think about an elf, they think about either the Dark Crystal, which is awesome, sure, or something in Tolkien. So you're like a pretty elf. Or they think about WoW or the Warcraft. Of course there's elements of and influences from those things in DreadLore. Of course, because we're all a bunch of big-time geeks. But the playable races are not those. We have Elfin, which is another word for elf, but they're not Tolkien elves. They're more based in mythology. Now you could describe your character as something more of like a Tolkien elf if you want to play that, or like a blood elf or something. Sure, why not? Why could you not be that? But the whole idea is not to transplant another setting onto this, right? The DreadLore setting is supposed to be something new, and it is. This has been an obstacle, and it's one of the reasons that we don't use words like human and elf and dwarf, because the moment you do that, you have to get past connotations. Instead, we wanted to create, or I should say I wanted to create, because I did, these different races. As it turns out, it's kind of difficult to do that. Side note, J.R.R. Tolkien actually, he wrote letters to some of his friends complaining about this obstacle that he had to get over when he was writing Lord of the Rings. Because at the time there were no Tolkien elves or dwarves and such, so everyone was like, oh right, an elf, like a little sprite thing in the forest. And he's like, no. And a dwarf, oh, that's something bad or whatever. Anyway, so I'm going to read this stuff. I have writ the following, having gleaned wisdom from all wanderings through the spring of my life. Oh, the multitudinous revolutions I hath seen. Probably wrong. Go screw yourself. Mortal denizens, native to this realm of Craster, now known as Zens, are widespread unto it, and are as various as the lands thereof. But can every facet of reality be populated? Thou hailest of greater ancestors. Thou art the fruit of paragons lost to the fathoms of antiquity. As the world waneth, and as ages gray, so too do we. Paragons art among you, and thou art spawned from them. Beyond this natural realm lieth still 5 true realms, as vast as they art strange. Be not fooled, children. Thou art not alone within the realms of Craster. So, there are these little blurbs throughout the bestiary and the Getting Started Guide and this kind of stuff. You know, some of it's probably spelled incorrectly. And those of you that actually know how to write in Middle English, help us. And we'll say thanks a whole bunch. All right. The races. You've got the playable races. You've got the Dinna. You could pronounce this Daoine. You could say Daoine. We did for a while. That's actually incorrect. It looks like it's Daoine. It's not. It's Dinna or Daoine. These people are the people of the world. They are the most populous, the most industrious is maybe the wrong word. They're survivors. Yeah. They come in 2 forms, Sibylline and Crossed. Let's talk a little bit about the Daoine. Pejoratives. You can call them plague rats. So an old Dinna or an old Daoine adage would say, those who inherit the land are only the dead. Daoine are the ones that they've been around a really, really long time. Alright, the imperial lands of peace of Daoine, also known as the Calgarian Empire and Azraelian Empire, sometimes simply called the Ten, are composed of more than 80% Daoine, pejoratively known as plague rats. Daoine is the formal name for these lesser cousins of the Daoine Shia, the progenitors. Many Daoine also possess mixed blood and have gleaned more advantage than disadvantage from the mingling. Some rare few still exhibit certain traits of the Daoine Shia. These traits often coincide with fame and sometimes awe. Daoine range greatly in height. The smallest adult Daoine stands 4'6" and the largest 7'6". A Daoine's skin color depends more on the region where they live, ranging from nearly black, bronze, and gold in sunnier climates to greenish and umber in temperate and gray and pearly white in colder places. Most Daoine have brown, green, or hazel eyes, although some have blue eyes. Daoine hair is some of the most diverse of Craster, as they routinely dye and dress their hair in elaborate styles. So they kind of look like clowns, a little bit. Like a 1970s cartoon, perhaps. Most player characters are going to be Daoine. And the reason for this is you can be a wide range. Are you from the Sunset Isles? Well, you've got that golden, beautiful skin, with amber eyes and reddish auburn hair that drapes down your back, and you could be 7 feet tall and gangly and like surf all the time. Why not? And you're the same race as, one of the hill folk who is essentially just like a Scottish person with a big red fucking beard and, all burly and such, with a very pearly white freckled skin. You're both Daoine. Someone could say, oh, you're human. We don't like to say that. We don't want to use the word human because the moment you say human, you're like, oh, right, you're the average race. You're, firebrands who die younger than all the races and are basically just us. No, you're not. You're from Craster. You're not human. You're Daoine, or you're Denna. You are the progeny of the Daoine Shia, who were things that were wildly different than what humans are. Things that have 6 fingers that in some ways are horrific to behold, yet beautiful, as all the paragons are. You're the progeny of that. You're the Daoine. You are of the land, of the place where you come from. Your origin matters. Where you come from in Craster matters. If you're from the Twilight Dim, which is another sort of like a side realm to the natural realm. So the natural is where everything normally is. The Twilight Dim, that's where the oaf and the elfin reside. Perhaps you're a Daoine who grew up within the Twilight Dim. You're going to look more like an elfin. You're going to be more like what you would consider perhaps a dark elf in Warhammer to look like. But you're actually a Daoine. You know different shit. Alright. So let me throw down a little bit more here. Right, so habitat and society. This, by the way, what I'm reading from here is the bestiary. This will probably be a stretch goal for the Kickstarter in June. It's another book, and I'm dealing with shipping and handling and getting a lot done. So we'll see if I actually provide this one. It'll definitely be, if it's provided in this Kickstarter, it will definitely be a stretch goal. And I'm leaning towards, if this Kickstarter is for the getting started guide and the module, if it's successful, I'll do another Kickstarter and definitely put the bestiary up as the supplemental book that just goes into the whole world in a lot more detail. Right. So that's what I'm reading from here. As you can see, there's tons of comments, and it's changes have to be made. Changes must be made. I'm a sad Daoine. Decision skills. Are you? Decision skills. Do I know you? If I don't, hail. Thank you for coming. If I do, thank you for coming. Tell me who you are. All right. Habitat and society of the Daoine. During the age of progeny and later, which I should talk to you about what the ages are. I will here in a minute. During the age of progeny and later, Daoine are responsible for most of the thriving societies still remaining on Craster. This is due to the fact that Daoine are natural explorers, risk takers, and are generally gregarious. Daoine have walked, sailed, climbed, and died in nearly every region of Craster. Daoine are curious to a fault and often unafraid when confronted with the unknown. It's sort of baked into playing one of these guys that you're an adventurer. That's the point. This lack of reserve gets Daoine into more trouble than not. They mingle and procreate easily with other Daoine, barring outside influences or feuds of some sort. Daoine are known to build settlements and forge trade routes at an alarming rate. The two greatest Daoine cities are known as Prime, or the Bonestone City, to the Zins who live there, and Meirin, also known as the City of Houses, within the Empire of Azraelia. The Bonestone City is located in the north, on the continent of Daoine, and is the seat of the Calgarian Empress. The City of Houses is located in the south, on the coastline of the continent of Azraelia. Which city is actually the greatest is highly debated. Ecology. So, if you ever read or you ever played Dungeons and Dragons 2nd Ed, so AD&D, Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, the bestiary was so cool. And I took a lot of influences from 2nd Ed when it came to the formatting of this book, as well as ideas when it came to the setting, specifically Planescape. And I won't go too much on a tangent on that, but the idea of Planescape was it got into the why and not so much the power levels and mechanics of societies. So I'll leave it there. Anyway, ecology. If Daoine exhibit a weakness, it is that the Daoine population continues to grow and feed off the environment in a non-sustainable way. While individual Daoine might fight to protect the ecosystem, Daoine settlements tend to have an adverse effect on them. Overpopulation and restricted resources are almost always at the source of the Daoine feuds. Despite their willingness to brave new horizons, Daoine are also plagued with the long memories of wrongdoings. More long-lived races tend to regard Daoine as somewhat short-sighted. The fading memory of an ancient blood feud would more than likely be forgiven and forgotten if only the original victim and accuser still lived. So, part of that, you got to put it in context of the world. Daoine are not short-lived, as we'll see, as compared to us. In fact, one of the traits they gain, and everything in DreadLore is about traits. You bid your traits to do meaningful actions. And your traits are your resources. So there's a finite number of them. And as you advance, you get more of them. That said, long-lived or long-lived is a trait you gain from being Daoine. The average Sibylline, so that's one of the sects of Daoine, the average Sibylline lifespan is 120 seasons. But many of their elders have been known to live as long as 200 seasons. A season is roughly a year. One of our years. The world is very old in Craster. I should say, Craster, the world, is very old. And it started to slow the spin. The sun is red and swollen. It's on its way out. It's not going to go out tomorrow or in 100 years or even in 1,000 years. But in terms of the cosmos, the sun's on its way out. The world of Craster is on its way out. That's why it's the age of a dying world. So a season lasts roughly around, I believe it's 300 days. 333 days, I believe, is what we said it. We liked the base 10 system. So a year is 1,000 days. A little bit less than, it's like yards and meters, if you want to get into it. So you got to take it in context. 120 seasons, that's 120 years, roughly. That's the average Sibylline lifespan. So they're hitting middle age, their 60s, 70s, and 80s. And unless they're dying by violence, around 100 to 120 that would be roughly our 70 to like 90 years old. So they're not short-lived by our standards, by human standards. The idea here is the world is old. Craster is old, and the things that are of the natural realm, which the playable races are of the natural realm, they're also old. There is this element in Tolkien, in Arda, the idea that the elves in Lord of the Rings are not immortal. They'll die when the earth dies. So they age just very, very slowly. Now, there's that element in DreadLore. It's not that things are elves and they are quasi-immortal, although there are quasi-immortal beings that in DreadLore that definitely consider themselves better and immortal. It's more that as the world ages and everything kind of slows, so does aging in a way. And that might sound counterintuitive, and perhaps there's an argument to be made that it is, but it's still cool to think about. The idea that you've been around for 120 seasons means you've seen roughly, what is that, 40 winters? Because we drop out spring. In the Age of a Dying World, there is no spring. There's autumn, which is the coolest season. You've got winter, of course, because why not? And then you have the blazing hot summer. Spring is kind of like a hot-tet. It's real fast. Only a few things grow. And there's lots of famine as the Age of a Dying World continues. Right. Let me see if anyone has spoken. I'm a sad Daoine. That's what I saw. So there's a little bit about Daoine and a little bit about the world. All right, so I'm at 2:30. That's an hour in. I've covered Magicka, Theurgy, and I've covered one of the playable races, the Daoine, or the Dinna. And I'll finish talking about them really quick, and then we'll end this. And I think this is a pretty good idea for these live streams. I'm going to be doing this from now until when the Kickstarter starts, to just give an introduction to the world. And hopefully you guys enjoy this. All right. To finish up the Daoine. Sibling Daoine, the people of the world. They are long-lived. Full-blooded. This book needs some, I mean, it's not finished. It needs some editing here. But this would say something along the lines of, there are full-blooded Daoine and half-blooded. Really that's a bit of a misnomer. It's full-blooded sibling. Alright, I'm going to edit this right now. Full-blooded sibling and half-blooded sibling. And this is flavor text. Flavor text. Alright. Full-bloods, also known as blue-bloods, silver hairs, and the untouched, are few and far between by the age of progeny. They bear the closest resemblance to their paragon race than other Daoine. In terms of blood potency, full-bloods are considered first cousins to the Dinastia. The first kings and queens are thought to have been full-blooded. The mystics of 12 and 7 keep scrolls which say that whole societies of full-blooded Daoine held court with the near-immortal races Lachey, Dragonkin, and Hella-Elfen. Full-blooded Daoine are easy to point out in a crowd of Daoine. They bear the mark of their forefathers, the Dinastia, which starkly differs from their half-blooded Zens. Full-bloods often have silver, white, yellow, dark purple, or jet black hair. They might possess a sixth digit on their hands and or feet. Their eyes vary from shades of gray to cobalt to black. Full-bloods live longer than half-bloods. Full-bloods must deal with the fame or infamy wrought from their strong lineage. So there's some stuff that needs to be said there to fill out those descriptions. But the idea is, when you pick a sibling Daoine to play as your race, you can also choose, well, are you considered full-blooded or half-blooded? And as you can see, full-blooded, they're not necessarily beautiful. There's a little bit of that horrific quality to them from the Dinastia, which is their paragon. Half-blooded. Sibling Daoine are also royalty. Sibling Daoine, who are also royalty, tend to look down on those of lower birth. They rather erroneously call them half-blooded. The term is somewhat misleading, as most races of Craster have been mixed and diluted over ages gone by, since the days of the Paragons. A true half is the term used for a Denna who can prove they have at least 50% full blood running through their veins. Quarter-blooded is also a common term, and is sometimes used as a distinguishing factor in social situations. Daoine are considered more full-blooded if they possess more of the full-blooded traits, for example, silver hair, an extra digit, gray eyes, etc. Most Daoine houses in society can trace their lineage back to a true half, quarter-blood, and some older races trace theirs back to an actual full-blood. The Empress and her house have the highest concentration of full, half, and quarter-blooded Daoine. So, this is flavor text. Again, this is in the bestiary, not in the Getting Started guide. This is extra stuff. If you want to know about Daoine society, this is kind of how they deal with one another. So, in my previous example of you being from the Sunset Isles, if you go to the Bone Sun City and deal with high society, you will be looked down on as a half-blooded Daoine. Why? Because you don't possess the features of one of the Denashia. And as you can see, the Denashia, they looked like monsters, because they kind of were. They were of a bygone age. The last bit on Daoine, called crossed Daoine, or as a pejorative, mongrels, cur-crossed, half-breeds. These guys are pretty cool. A crossed Daoine, or simply crossed, is a Zen, which Zen is short for denizen. Again, you can call them people, you can call them Zens. A crossed is a Zen who's mixed with another race other than Daoine. For example, a Zen who is half lizard folk and half Daoine. They should just be half lizard, because there are no lizard folk, there are lizard. A Daoine is extremely potent, or as Daoine, as Daoine blood is extremely potent and dominant, half-breeds generally resemble their Daoine parent more than their off-race parent. Crossed are typically ostracized by both their families, although there are exceptions. Half-breed, crossed gain either a monstrous trait or an appropriate trait. So the idea is, Daoine are everywhere, and you know they've copulated with a lot of different things. This is how you can get, if someone was like, I want to play kind of like a half snake character or a half dragon, or can I play something kind of like a half orcish thing? Yeah, you can fold that into the story. You are essentially a Daoine, but you have a few other traits, and that's how the system provides that. Okay, one of the examples is the Xander clan of Reach is known to raise crossed, and those families take pride in their quote-unquote strengthened blood. All right, awesome. So that's all I'll do for today. I did not really talk about the ages of Craster. I talked about the world. Oops. I'll talk about the ages next time. And I hope you guys dug it. If you want to know something specific, or if there's something that I said that didn't make a total amount of sense, please let me know. Also, thank you, Amores, for jumping on. Thank you for Decision Skills jumping on. All right. I will see you guys next time. I think next time, by the way, will be Sunday at around 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and we'll do another hour. All right. Peace.